Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about how Sergio Perez turned his Red Bull career around. This is being recorded right after his victory in the Monaco Grand Prix, where he brilliantly held off teammate Verstappen and both Ferraris for a very important win in his career. The premise of this video is going to outline essentially how Perez got on top of the new Red Bull car and how he went from struggling massively compared to Verstappen last year to being right on the pace with him, potentially challenging for the world title. Before I get into the video, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, it really means a lot to us, and without further ado, let's get cracking. I'm going to start this analysis by essentially going over what issues Perez was having in 2021 and how his gap to Verstappen looked back then compared to what it looks like right now. One of the best metrics to use to evaluate Perez's performance in 2021 and how at one with the car he was is the qualifying gap to Verstappen. He didn't manage to outqualify Max in the dry at all after the Imola Grand Prix, and overall was beaten 21-1 in representative qualifying sessions by a gap of around half a second. Whilst you may argue Checo's never been the greatest one-lap driver out there, it's something he's had to deal with his entire career, so this metric can be applied and compared with to other teammates he's had in different cars and seasons, and it's substantially bigger than anything he's had before. Yes, there is the Verstappen factor. In 2021, Max was electrically fast. He was so at one with the car and was getting everything out of it every single session. So it was always a tough ask for Perez to even be remotely close to his pace. However, half a second is a massive margin in F1, and realistically, no two top drivers at this level should be separated by half a second when both are operating at their best. So something was clearly not right with Checo in 2021. He had limited testing, only 1.5 days to get used to a new team and car, and fundamentally the Red Bull of 2021 and from previous years did not exactly click with his natural driving style, whereas on the flip side with Verstappen, it was very much in sync with what he asks for from a car. So driving styles, in the sense of how drivers approach different corners, what techniques they use to extract the lap time from the car, is something not many people talk about. So essentially Checo Perez and Verstappen drive very differently naturally. So we can expect there to be differences when one is comfortable with the car and the other not. Perez is a driver who brakes very late and very hard and likes to rotate the car early, usually in the first or second phase of the corner, so corner entry. That's very important to him, and naturally this requires a very stable platform. This is because when you brake hard and late, you're pitching the car much more. This means the weight, the mechanical weight, as well as the aero centre of pressure is being shifted much more towards the front of the car by the driver, which causes the car to over-rotate. The reason having a stable rear end or having more rear downforce helps with this regard is because when a car is rotating or turning, the outside rear tyre is doing the most work. So having more downforce at the rear helps the car cope with the over-rotation and manage the loads, the excessive loads at the rear. The Red Bull, however, was known as a pointy car, or a car that was on the nose. The downforce it produced at the rear end was much more peaky than of a standard low rake car, because on a high rake car it's much more reliant on channeling the correct amount of air towards the diffuser, and this is always not possible due to the nature of how the car is pitching and changing with yaw and angles. So it was much more sensitive to those changes, which meant the downforce produced at the rear was not as consistent, meaning Checo didn't have the confidence to attack corner entries in the same way. When a car is already pointy like the Red Bull was, Checo's style of over-rotating the car only makes the problem worse. Checo is actively inducing oversteer on corner entries, whereas the correct way to manage the deficiencies of the Red Bull or a pointy car would be to induce understeer purposefully, which is what Verstappen does. Verstappen likes to brake earlier and use less brake pressure and trailing the brakes and managing the pedal inputs and pedal pressure in a much more intricate way. This means he manages the weight transfer from front to rear. He doesn't pitch the car as much as Perez does, and thus Max likes to keep more of the weight and the aero centre of pressure towards the rear to induce that understeer and under-rotate the car, because the Red Bull naturally over-rotates due to its aero and mechanical characteristics. Max is a master at this, and this enabled him to get every single millisecond out of the car in qualifying and during a race distance. In order to get nearer to the car's potential, Perez had to adopt some of Max's techniques he uses, and naturally this takes time to get used to, and it was a spiral effect, especially in the second third of the season. Perez went on a bit of a slump, was chasing different things with how to set up the car with his new style, fell away in the championship, and things were looking quite bleak. This ultimately meant he had to become a support driver to Verstappen, often being used to block the Mercedes cars with some very good defensive driving. But as a racing driver, this is not what Perez would have wanted. He said multiple times his ambitions to become world champion, and we're seeing that at the forefront, especially in recent races in 2022. So what has changed going into this new era of F1? This new era of F1 has completely shaken up the way the cars are meant to be driven. And as it happens, the current Red Bull car appears to be quite understeery, with very good rear downforce but lacking at the front with grip. Whilst nobody has gone out and spoken publicly as to why this may be the case, my first thought is their use of the pull rod front suspension. To briefly sum up, either the front and rear suspension can either be a push rod or a pull rod. The difference can be seen on screen here, and most teams tend to go towards a push rod front suspension simply because of how versatile you can make the suspension setup. However, there's very little performance gains in choosing one or the other, and Red Bull went for a pull rod front suspension due to some of its weight and aero benefits. However, the biggest drawback, which is not seen by designers because they're not driving the car, is how it makes the car handle to the driver. A pull rod front suspension, due to how it's positioned and how it's mounted onto the chassis, means it's much harder to set up a racing car with a pull rod front suspension. And this means the suspension, due to its characteristics, needs to be run much stiffer than with a push rod, and this ultimately induces a lot of turn-in understeer. This is something Max Verstappen is struggling a little bit with this season, and it's something Checo is a master of getting on top of. And ultimately this is paying dividends and we can see that in Checo's driving, banging out great consistent results, fighting for the championship, getting his first pole position. Everything's coming together for him simply due to how the car's characteristics are this year compared to last. As the car is sluggish and understeery this year, the Red Bull specifically, it means that Perez's style of naturally creating oversteer helps dial out that understeer that the Red Bull is suffering from, and Max's style of inducing understeer is only making the problem worse, and he has no confidence to attack the corner entries like he usually does, and that's showed in the new qualifying gap and pace gaps between Verstappen and Perez, as well as the points. Perez's qualifying gap to Verstappen in representative dry sessions has only been 0.08 seconds, He's only 15 points behind in the standings. If Perez can manage to hold his pace that he's shown in the first 7 races, I don't think it's out of the question that we could see Perez take the championship very far. Maybe even take it all the way, who knows. All we know is, as viewers, that there's very exciting times ahead for the championship, and we're all looking forward to seeing where this goes. So that concludes it for this little video on Perez's driving this year. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button and comment below. Do you think Perez can take the championship fight all the way? Love to know your opinion. I'll be engaging with the comments as usual, and until the next video, it's goodbye.